Honorable Anna. Other staff not mentioned, we have Mr. Justin R. Baysak, the project SMILE coordinator. We also have Eliza Noel Tan, the communications and development officer of CCEF. Yours truly, our ocean program coordinator and the research modernization officer. And of course, I cannot afford to not mention these partners. We also like to acknowledge the presence of the TSC party list, or the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines party list, who is our major sponsor for today's venue. And of course, our dear Executive Director, Patrick Son, for making this forum a possible one. So to everyone, good afternoon, and let's give ourselves a big round of applause. And attending via Zoom, we also have our CRM officer, Ms. Michelle Baird, and our area coordinator, Mr. Ray Osmo. At this point, I'd like to proceed to the opening program of our forum, the discussion on the proposed guidelines for municipal water delineation. So at this point, we would like to call the presence of Mr. R. Barrett from the PUCP, but if he's not here, do we have anyone from the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines party list to speak on Sir Aaron's behalf? Do we have? All right, so we thank. Yes, but even though Sir Aaron is not here, but we are really thankful enough for the kindness and generosity extended by the PUCP for providing us the venue free of charge. All right. So at this point, I'll give the floor to finally welcome us all here in this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our executive director, your executive director, my executive director, none other than Director Auburn Patrick Wikivy-Samson.
and good participants. Also, sa ito ang nasa Zoom, ang mga nasa Secure. Naminaw po ng mga taga-Secure, kaya ito po sila invite via Facebook Live. Hindi pa sila sa signal, yung tawang Secure. So, natin sila nagtapos sa kalugar. Before anything else, I'd like to thank the TUCP party list presented by Art Barrett, who graciously accepted the offer ng mag-partner aning specific forum. So sila ang nag-sponsor so they allowed us to use Mariner's Port and to serve sila with snacks later. So daghang kayong salamat, TUCP party list. There was a study conducted nationwide na 15% ng sa total coastal communities ang concern about preservation and conservation of the marine ecosystem. So nga naman dahil so they found out that 85% are the illegal fishers. So that's why 15% are concerned. I see. More or less a joke, no? But I think it reflects the reality. No? It's really hard to balance concerns, economic concerns, and the protection of the environment. And that has been the constant struggle when we mention development. Ang atong topic ng hapon is again, doon ang impact sa economics and doon ang impact po sa protection and preservation of our marine ecosystem. So we decided actually himuon nga mga continuing education at tanan, even though tingali dili tanang munisipyo ani directly apektahan, but indirectly because of that previous taken on basin of apektahan niya. So, dinala natin taas mo because very interesting ang discussion ni Atty. Osorio about this proposal from the BFAR. No, at-usbon ang definition sa pag-define sa ito ang municipal waters. So this is very interesting. Okay, so inyong internet connection, kaya welcome sa tanan o daghang salamat.
That helps now to review some welcome remarks, a welcome address. So again, we would like to remind everybody that this is really a collaboration between the SCCRMC or Cebu Province Coastal Resource Management Council, who are attending via online, it's via Facebook Live due to some signal glitch. And at the same time, the SCCRMC or the Southeast Cebu Coastal Resource Management Council, and of course headed by Honorable Jose Cito Mulag Jr. with its members. We have Mayor from Mr. Mayor Merlo Terama from Bulacan. We also have Mayor from Danaguere. We have Mayor Jeffrey Bolsilla. We also have Mayor Michael Angelo Sistoso of Alcoy, Mayor Alan Cesaldo of Argao, Mayor Marites Buscato of Santander, and the last but not the least is not here for some reasons, Honorable Ernesto S. Calderon of Sampo 1. So there you go, it's SCCRMC, and of course SCCRMA. All right, so since it's already into the discussion of the Municipal Water Delineation proposed guidelines, it is our honor to introduce to you our keynote and competent speaker for this afternoon. Our speaker graduated from University of the Philippines, Diliman, with a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry degree. She also earned her Juris Doctor at the Diliman University, Philippines, and a certificate of attendance in coastal management with master of units at the University of Rhode Island Coastal Resource Center, United States, South America, and USA. She has been teaching environmental law and a practicing legal specialist for the past 21 years and is one of the founders and managing trustees of the Philippine Earth Justice Center, or PEJC, which has filed several environmental cases in Visayas and Mindanao. She is particularly known as one of the two lawyers who are recognized as the stewards of the dolphins and whales of the Leon Strait Protected Seascape in Central Visayas. In April 2015 decision of the Supreme Court of the landmark case, President Marine Mammals and Dolphin versus Reyes against illegal oil exploration in the protected area. She was also the executive director of Coastal Conservation and Education Foundation, or CCEF, from 2002 to 2012, and has co-authored various journal articles and other publications in partnership with other stakeholders. Today, she is a professor of law from University of Cebu and currently the chair of governing board of the IUCN Academy of Environmental Law, as well as a member of steering committee of the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law, or WCEL. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, our dear mayors and members of SCRMC, please help me welcome our speaker for this afternoon, none other than Atty. Rose-Liza Eisma Osorio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maayong hapon sa tanan. For those who are joining us via Zoom as well as in the conference room. Thank you so much for your time and attention also for this afternoon. And there's an echo in talking about the legal framework for the delineation of municipal water. So please allow me to share my screen so that I can share my slides. If I can ask the the organizers to allow me to share my screen because I prepared a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, let me check if I can share. Um, yeah, so this is now the new normal. Okay, so I will be talking about this afternoon about the legal framework for the archipelagic principle as a counter to the currently proposed guidelines for the delineation of municipal waters. So before I start with this discussion, which is a legal discourse or really looking at the legal frameworks as to the application of archipelagic principle when we delineate our municipal waters. Let me first talk about the rationale behind why we're doing this. We know that the Philippine Fisheries Code of 1998 was amended recently by RA 10654, and this was basically due to the fact that there were many additional features that were added in order to address one of the growing issues and confounding issues with respect to our coastal and marine environment, which is the fisheries resources that we have. With a poverty incidence of about 41.4%, our fishermen are still considered as the poorest in the 9 basic sectors in the Philippines. And the avowed policy of our state in our constitution is that social legislations such as this, the Philippine Fisheries Code, should be liberally construed in favor of its beneficiaries, which are the over 1,614,000 fishers involved in municipal waters. And so this is really the rationale. So we need our fisheries resources. It is important to the dietary needs. Over 50% of our diet every day is taken from the sea. So our seas are really um, our connection to life, and also the regular source of income for the marginal fishers that I mentioned earlier. So, but then we know that there are serious impacts of IUU fishing. So, in the new fisheries code, the focus was now given to IUU fishing, or the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. According to the BFAR, there's a serious threat to sustainable fishing. About 11 to 23 billion dollars in the global economy has been causing this unsustainable is caused by unsustainable fishing practices. About 14.33% of the global catch is actually from illegal, unreported, and unregulated or IUU fishing, which is equivalent to about 11 to 26 metric tons per year. And we also know that with the IUU fishing, there are intensive or extensive damages to the marine environment that is caused by these industrial scale fishing activities, where you're taking almost everything on the seabed, and not leaving behind the intact some of the important features that we find in our seabed, which are the coral reefs and the seagrasses. And then IUU fishing also is known to affect socioeconomic conditions and creates unfair competitions against legitimate fishers. So RA 10654 was really intended to prevent, deter, and eliminate IUU fishing. So the key word there is prevent, deter, and eliminate. So that is the intention of the new law or the amendments. And if for IUU fishing, the code extensively also defines what is illegal fishing, what is unreported fishing, and what is unregulated fishing. And there are separate provisions with respect to these different kinds or different types of activities that are now prohibited or punished under the new fisheries code. So, for instance, the illegal fishing, we know this is the common type of illegal fishing activity that we know, because these are generally fishing activities that are in violation of our laws and regulations, and even also of the foreign state uh, uh, laws and regulations, because you have now what you call distant water fishing, which are also regulated by our laws. And then we have also unreported, when fishing activities is not reported or misreported to the government. So this is already also seen as, a way to address better transparency in fisheries activities. And lastly, unregulated fishing is defined as in areas where there are regional fishery management organizations, or RFMOs. For instance, there are RFMOs for tuna. Then this unregulated fishing would be done by vessels without nationality. So this is the difference. These are the differences between the three types of activities that are punished by the amended fisheries code. So let me now go through some of the salient features of 10654, so that you'll also know the context behind why we're objecting to the current proposal of using the mainland principle, and not the archipelagic principle in the delineation of municipal water. So these are the salient features that you can find in RA 10654 that has really changed RA 8550. So first, it addresses high seas fishing and fishing in other coastal states by Philippine flag vessels. Next, it emphasizes compliance with conventions to conserve and manage living marine resources, such as the UNCLOS, or the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. So there will be a mention later on UNCLOS a lot when we talk about the archipelagic principle, because actually the archipelagic principle is actually sourced from this international treaty, which we are a signatory of, and which we have already adopted in our national law via a Republic Act. And in some of the jurisprudence, this has also been mentioned, specifically the jurisprudence about the grounding of warship in two Bataha Reefs, where the Supreme Court also discussed the provisions of the UNCLOS in application to the damages that were being sought for the grounding of the U.S. warship into Bataha Reef. So there has been an adoption, express and implied adoption of the provisions of the UNCLOS in effect in our own national or domestic laws. And then 10654 also increases the fines and adopts graduation of penalties. Plus, there are also accompanying penalties for serious violations, to ensure that the sanctions now are dissuasive and have a deterrent effect. So because again, the focus of the 10654 is to prevent and deter and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. It also adopts an escalation clause on the amount of fines in order to address inflation, and as well as maintain a deterrent effect. Okay, so next, it empowers the BFAR to prosecute offenses regardless of where the offense took place. So basically, this has something to do directly with the administrative adjudication procedure. And then it also introduces the concept of community service for municipal fisherfolk offenders, or those who cannot afford to pay the fines. So they can now instead do community service in exchange. And there is now, as mentioned earlier, a new chapter on administrative adjudication, so that cases will be promptly and effectively prosecuted through the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. So they can the BFAR now has this adjudication committee. They can also issue notice of violations, just like the common concept that we know in transport law, diba? That notice of violation, the concept of NOV. Okay, so I'll just highlight two of the new features in the 10654. So in RA 8550, when we talk about access, on how to limit access to fisheries resources, we use the MSY as a, way to determine how to limit access. So MSY stands for maximum sustainable yield. But this was found to be really how do you call it? Not really as effective, because the measurement using MSY has been done for so long, and it has been found out that we have actually achieved our MSY, maximum sustainable yield, for our fisheries as early as the early 1990s. So then when we came and when they drafted 10654, they decided to use other means of measuring how to limit access. And now we have the terms harvest control rules and reference points. So, well, the message here is that, when we try to limit access to our fisheries resources, we need good science. And harvest control rules will be based on science already. So when we limit the number of licenses that we issue, it should be based now on harvest control rules and reference points. So when I talk about harvest control rules and reference points, this is a simple explanation given by the Pew Foundation. So it is the determination of the carrying capacity of fishing vessels allowed to operate actually inside a particular fishing ground. So this carrying capacity would be based on reference points and harvest control rules. So if you notice, there is a target and there's a buffer and there's a limit there. And these are the key features of harvest control rules. So you have, as a general rule, harvest control rules are actions or sets of actions to be taken in order to achieve a medium or long-term target reference point while avoiding reaching or breaching a limit reference point. So a target reference point, in other words, is your ideal level of fishing. So you measure this, you quantify your catch or biomass, and factor it in a buffer in order to avoid reaching the danger zone, which is your limit reference point. So the limit reference point is now the beginning of the danger zone for a stock. So it is a point of no return, as they say, because when you fish beyond the limit reference point, your fisheries will no longer be sustainable and your fisheries would collapse. And so that's why when you set your harvest control rules, these sets of actions should be based on a target reference point, and you have to avoid setting it well below that, because otherwise you will now be reaching the danger zone. So how is it now achieved in, a real context? So these are very science and technical, but then you could limit fishing effort using these different harvest control rules that are commonly adopted, like closed season. You provide priority access for license renewal. You also try to reduce by attrition, some by means of decommissioning already fishing vessels that can no longer be replaced, and other effective measures that are known in order to say that we are instituting harvest control rules. Okay, so another concept that I want to also talk about is the vessel monitoring measure. So the code now has this provision, section 119, on non-compliance with vessel monitoring measures, whereas previously in 8550 there was no provision at all. And one good news about this is that this will now be soon implemented, because BFAR recently came out with their administrative order in order to implement this for all types of fishing vessels. And so what is the concept of vessel monitoring measure? So how does it work? There's this, you put a vessel monitoring mechanism in a fishing vessel, and this can be detected through satellite, through land earth stations, and then there is a monitoring center based at the BFAR that will monitor the behavior, the location, of the fishing vessels. And this, I think, will be good news for especially for enforcement, because you don't have to spend so much time doing seaborne operations, because you will now have data to show to you whenever a commercial fishing vessel will encroach into your municipal waters. And so right now, I think the recent discussions are really with the BFAR is to ensure really that there should be proper sharing of information, especially with the local government units or other enforcement agencies, so that they can easily respond to any encroachment of commercial fishing activities into municipal water. So, but vessel monitoring measures is not something new, because we've been using satellite based information already for a while, using the VIRS. So the VIRS actually detects hot spots in municipal waters. And in fact, through Oceana, where I work with, we there's a continuous sharing of data as to the encroachment of these super lights, because the VIRS, one of the limitations of the VIRS is that it detects only light. So it's an infrared detection mechanism. And so, but this is good enough, because it will now provide us with information as to where the hotspots in municipal waters are with respect to the super lights, which is, as we know, prohibited to encroach also inside our municipal water. So if you're interested, I know you already know, perhaps this information. No, this is we there's a Facebook page that Oceana shares every week, where detection hotspots in municipal waters for these VIRS boats. So let me now go and talk about the basic principle of fisheries management. We know that Section 16, which is retained under the 10654, we know that the municipal and city government shall have jurisdiction over the 15-kilometer municipal waters. So under the IRR, the city government, the LGUs, in consultation with the pharmacies, should enact their ordinances, and that at the minimum delineates the boundaries of their municipal waters. And now it includes in their fisheries ordinance numbers of licenses and permits that may be issued in accordance with the harvest control rules, and reference points that may be adopted for the municipal water. So you might want to ask, like, how do we adopt HCR and reference points? Well, the BFAR has the NSAP, the National Fish Stock Assessment data, and based on this data that they gather on all the fish stocks of all the major fishing grounds, you can seek for their assistance and ask them on how to set the HCR and reference points in your municipal water. So in I think what I know is that in the Visayan Sea, they already know what are the HCR and reference points, because we also have a new concept introduced in the new fisheries code, which is the fisheries management area. So the FMA has already been delineated all over the country. There are in fact 12 FMAs all over the country, and this acts as an ecosystem based approach to fisheries management already, where fish stocks are managed according to fisheries ecosystems and not according to the boundaries of municipal water. So science can now guide the decision making inside these fisheries management areas, as well as the LGUs, or within the FMAs as well. So we know the concept of municipal waters, right? So 15 kilometers are municipal water, and it should be the intention of the fisheries code is to have preferential treatment for municipal fisher folk inside your municipal waters, while the commercial fishing are allowed only to fish outside the boundaries of the municipal waters. So this is based on the definition that we have. When you delineate your municipal waters, you use the section 4 paragraph 58 of the Fisheries Code as amended. And if you look at the definition, municipal waters include not only streams, lakes, etc. within municipal waters, so the inland waters as well, and which are not included within protected areas as defined under the NIPAS law, public forests, timberlands, forest or fishery reserves, but also marine waters included. So this is now how you draw the lines between two lines drawn perpendicular to the general coastline from points where the boundary lines of the municipality touch the sea at low tide, and a third line parallel with the general coastline, including offshore islands and 15 kilometers from such coastline. But where there are two municipalities that are on opposite shores and there's less than 30 kilometers of municipal waters, the third line shall be equally distant. So they will now equally apportion the municipal waters between them. So, but basically, the general rule is that you draw your boundary lines where the sea touches it at low tide and draw a parallel line 15 kilometers. And if you look at the definition, I've underlined there, it includes offshore islands. So this is now where the contending opinions are. Because with the Dow draft administrative order, I understand from Mitch that you have a copy of the draft. If you look at the draft AO, in section 5B, paragraph 1, subparagraph C, and subparagraph I, you see there that the reckoning point of the measurement of the 15-kilometer municipal water shall be the coastline of the mainland municipality. And so the mention now is that the coastline of the mainland municipality. So this has with, especially with the municipalities with offshore islands, instead of drawing your municipal waters from the offshore islands and then 15 kilometers therefrom, this draft AO would say that it would be drawn from the mainland municipality and then 15 kilometers. So that has a lot of implications because again, it will now disregard the fact that you have an offshore islands where you can draw the 15-kilometer boundary, and that would also mean that for municipalities with offshore islands, you will have, you will have a smaller area for your municipal waters. So it also in as a continuation of that provision, it says that for offshore islands, inhabited or not, beyond 15 kilometers from the coastline of the mainland municipalities or island municipalities, they should have 7 fathoms or below isobats as protection zone. So meaning to say, if the island already is beyond the 15 kilometers, when you draw it from the mainland, it will generate its own municipal waters, and it only will have, which is for its protection zone, which is an area of 7 fathom and below isobat. So, ang depth sa dagat ang iyang basis. And this will be the only, you cannot draw like 15 kilometers from that offshore island or even an island municipality itself. And finally, where practicable, the provision continues on to say, islands belonging to a municipality but located within the municipal waters of other municipalities and offshore islands beyond 15 kilometers, the 7 fathom depth and below curve of islands be clearly indicated on the maps provided by the NAMRIA, provided that the fisher folks of the island located inside the municipal waters of another municipality shall not be deprived to fish in the 7 fathom area using non-active gear. So this is where medyo nagkalabo-labo na, no? Because again, you have a situation where there are islands belonging to one municipality, but then it is actually within the municipal waters of another municipality. We have a lot of this na there are islands that are closer to one municipality, but in fact it is included in the municipal waters of other municipalities. One example I think I could say would be Apo Island, diba? It's closer to Darwin, but it's actually within, the municipal waters or within the jurisdiction of Sambuanguita. So these are things that you should think about. And so in in this paragraph, it says that the fisher folks in these islands will not be deprived to fish in the seven. So again, the depth will be the measurement, not the extent. Will be the measurement using non-active year. So that's a lot of work actually to measure. So the issue here now that we found is that with this proposed AO, does the legislative intent behind the Fisheries Code, the principles under international law, warrant the application of the archipelagic principle in the delineation of municipal waters? Because if you use the archipelagic principle, it could mean that, their proposed AO would be not in accordance with our laws, not in accordance with UNCLOS or international law, because we think it's really against the principles, as we already know, that has been established in the current laws that we have. So our position is that when we strongly believe that we should apply the archipelagic principle in the delineation of municipal waters. So we looked at the legislative history of the Fisheries Code as early as the 1935, under the 1935 Constitution, and we look at the succeeding Fisheries Code until the current Fisheries Code that we had. So I had a law student study with me this laws. In fact, this was his JD thesis, where I asked him to look at the legislative history of the Fisher Code, so that and examine whether archipelagic principle could be applied in the delineation of municipal water. So from what he found out is that the legislative history of the fisheries laws in the country would show that the delineation of municipal waters using the archipelagic principle is in line with the principle of local autonomy and devolution of powers, and it is also in line with the policies achieving food security, maintaining sound ecological balance, and protecting the rights of municipal fisher folk. So, because of this, we maintain that archipelagic principle instead of the mainland principle, which is being proposed in the proposed AO, should be adopted. So, because when you apply the archipelagic principle, it is in line with the intent of the legislature when they drafted the Fisheries Code, when we adopted international law principles in our domestic law. So, the 1987 Constitution shows that the archipelagic principle is adopted. So you can see it from Article 1, which is the definition of our national territory. It also shows that, the archipelagic principle should be used because we adopt the basic principles of international law as part of the law of the land. And since we are a signatory of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, then we should adopt, because UNCLOS is the considered as the constitution of the oceans in our planet, and the UNCLOS sets out the archipelagic principle there. So when you are an archipelagic country, you have to abide by the archipelagic principle if you are a signatory thereof. And most of the countries in the world are signatories thereof, including China, by the way. So, so when you talk about the archipelagic principle and apply it in the delineation of our 15-kilometer range of municipal water, it should be from the outermost most offshore islands and not the mainland. Because when you draw the archipelagic principle, when you draw it around the Philippines, for instance, the archipelago, the outer limits, it says, Magod, that when you draw the baselines, the outer limits of the the different parts of the country will be used in determining the territorial sea, the exclusive economic zone, and the contiguous zone of the country. So mirroring that and using that in the delineation of municipal waters, we should also use the outer limits of the municipal waters of the municipality and not the mainland, because that would now be in line with the archipelagic principle. So when you draw your line parallel to the coastline of the municipal, you start off from the offshore islands and not the mainland. Okay, so this is also the rationale behind this, as I mentioned, is that the Constitution mandates the protection of the rights of subsistence fishermen. So if you limit the the municipal waters by using the mainland principle, that would also limit the area where municipal fisherfolk can fish and be given preferential rights. So, murag mugamay ang ilang area where they are given preferential treatment and give more area to commercial fishermen. So we know that, the policy under the Fisheries Code is to protect the rights of our fisherfolk, especially local communities, with priority to municipal fisherfolk in the preferential use of the municipal waters. This provision, in fact, is also found in the 1987 Constitution in Article 13, Section 7 thereof. So, it's a constitutional policy, in other words, not only a national policy found in our laws. Okay, so in other words, for fishery related activities in municipal waters, it should be always looking at, the preferential treatment of municipal fisherfolk. And when you also look at, when you adopt now the mainland principle as proposed, it would also escalate the conflict between commercial and municipal fisher folk. So this definition that has given them, that has been provided in the proposed administrative order, has actually sparked a conflict between municipal fisherfolk that has gone and commercial fisherfolk that has gone on for decades. But since, that the enactment of the Fisheries Code, this has all at least, clarified that, the legislative intent is really to construe social legislation such as the Fisheries Code liberally in favor of its beneficiaries, which are the municipal fisherfolk, the poorest of the poor among the 9 basic sectors. And so when you escalate the conflict by creating such, conflicting um, conflicting provisions or conflicting regulations, this conflict will not only affect food security but also the marine environment and the economy. And so it is important for us to provide a clear delineation of municipal waters that reflects the will and intention of the legislature and the compatibility of this concept with the principles stated in our international law principles. What are the arguments or arguments in favor of the archipelagic principle? So there are actually several arguments that we came up with. So first, there's a need to determine first the legislative intent or spirit of the definition of municipal water, since it is the controlling factors. I think I've always said this whenever I lecture on Fisheries Code, or any other law that I lecture on. You always look at the spirit of the law, diba? The intent of the law, so that it would control how you're going to construe or interpret the provisions of the law. So usually the spirit is found in the declaration of policy of a particular law. Second, the legislative intent behind the definition of municipal waters is to apply the archipelagic principle. So it was clear already, we've established that when you look at the definition, when you look at the the laws that we have adopted so far, archipelagic doctrine seems to be the way to go. Third, the application of the archipelagic doctrine is in consonance also of the trend of increasing the scope of jurisdiction and responsibilities of municipal and city governments over municipal waters. Because when you apply the mainland principle, diba, the effect would be to lessen the area of your municipal waters, and then now you're surrendering the areas to the BFAR because they are now given the power and jurisdiction over areas outside municipal waters. But then this means that your scope of jurisdiction will also be smaller as compared to what was there before. So that is not in consonance with the trend when we saw the fisheries code from 1935 onwards. The trend was really for to give increasing scope of jurisdiction and responsibilities to municipal and city governments. Next, the provisions of social justice. I've always repeated this, diba? This policy, our policies and the state policies is actually to construe legislation based on social justice and and the policy of economic inclusion under the fisheries code so that we can protect the rights of fisher folk by applying this archipelagic principle. Fifth is that when we refuse to adopt archipelagic principle in the delineation of municipal waters, it will produce absurd results. So I will show you in the next few slides how it would be absurd if we apply the mainland principle, not the archipelagic principle. Then finally, UNCLOS 3 principles extend to the fisheries code. So in interpretations in what we call statutory construction, since we adopt the general accepted principles of international law as part of the law of the land that is found in Article 2 of our Constitution, we extend the application of these general principles of international law into our local legislation as well. So again, so in when you look at the definition of the municipal waters, the legislative intent is really to apply the archipelagic principle in the delineation. That's why I don't know if you've been around for a while now when the RA 8550 was first passed in 1998. Immediately the DNR passed DAO 17. And under the DAO 17, which DNR crafted together with NAMRIA, they said that, they used the archipelagic principle. However, this was later on, repealed, not because of the use of archipelagic principle was not in accordance with our law, but because it was found out that DNR actually did not have the jurisdiction to issue the administrative regulations with respect to the delineation of municipal waters, because it was found out that based on the fisheries code, it should be the BFAR. So it was just, I think one of the, mistakes that was done in the process of adopting the guidelines for the delineation of municipal waters. But it was not because that of the fact that I would like to underscore this. It was repealed not because of the fact that they used the archipelagic principle. In fact, until today, DNR and even NAMRIO insist on the application of the archipelagic principle. So the experts, the technical expertise there would tell us na we have to apply the archipelagic principle in the delineation of our municipal water. So when you look at also the law, so it's now, we try to interpret the law. We know that the term general coastline in the definition of municipal water has never been qualified in the previous fisheries law. So it should not also be qualified now by saying na ang offshore islands should be, beyond, the scope of the delineation of municipal waters. So, and also consistent with case law or jurisprudence, it is reasonable to conclude that the phrase including offshore islands was added for a specific purpose and not a mere surplusage. So here, my student actually went into, statutory construction and principles on construing legislations. And we found that, when the code added the phrase including offshore islands, it was for the purpose, a specific purpose, and not just a mere surplusage. It's funny, because in law we tend to deal with the little details, and I guess the little details that we're really dealing with is this phrase, including offshore islands, and whether or not there was a comma or not before. So even a comma can really make a big difference. So for the legislators out there, I think you have to really be careful about crafting laws, because sometimes when you put a comma, it would mean an entirely different thing as compared to without a comma. Um, finally, the legislature also did not insert the phrase for the purpose of just indulging in mere semantic exercise. So it must be noted that unlike the previous fisheries laws, the Philippines ratified UNCLOS only in 1984, and to this end, the amendment in the 1998 Fisheries Code by adding the phrase is an affirmation of our adherence to the archipelagic principle, even in the local government level. So when we adopted UNCLOS 3 in 1984, and then we amended the Fisheries Code in 1998, the addition of the phrase including offshore islands was really an affirmation of our adherence to the archipelagic principle found in the UNCLOS. Okay, so um, and it is also the, when you talk about the application of the archipelagic principle, we also, as I mentioned already, it is also, we found that it is in consonance with the trend found in the local government code of increasing the jurisdiction of LGUs over municipal waters. Because if you look at the fisheries laws before, fisheries laws were national responsibilities. And then we had the devolution of powers. We had the local autonomy that now devolve the powers to the local government unit. So because of this, it appears for us that the application now would be in line with that also, because the intention of devolving the powers to the LGU was to increase the scope of jurisdiction of the local government units over their municipal waters. So that is also one of the things that we think was, shown. And then it is also to be, for us, we have to look at what was the intention of the legislature. So the intention for us was to widen the scope of the preferential treatment of fisher folk in municipal waters to the exclusion of commercial fishing sector by banning them from operating within municipal waters. Also, save for an exception, as you all know, the 10.1 to 15 exception, and encouraging them and incentivizing them to engage in fishing beyond municipal waters and Philippine territorial waters. So the policy of the state is to construe social legislation liberally in favor of the fisher folk. Okay. So this is now where I would show the absurdities when we adopt the mainland principle. So based on what Namria was saying to us, its position is that, we have to avoid absurdities in our legislation, especially in the implementation of legislation such as this. So if we adopt the proposed FAO, it would lead to a lot of absurdities, because the mainland principle would, be actually result to several situations or scenarios where it would be difficult to comprehend, and it would be difficult also to enforce. So it is basic also principle in statutory construction that we apply in law is that much weight should be given to contemporaneous construction of our government agency or officials charged with the implementation of the law, their competence, expertness, experience, and informed judgment, and the fact that they frequently are the drafters of the law that they interpret. So NAMRIA, which is given the competence, which has the competence rather, given their experience, should be given weight when they say that, when you apply mainland principle, it would be absurd. There would be a lot of absurdities. So let me now show some of the examples of the absurdities. So here, figure 1 would show the difference between the application of the mainland principle and the archipelagic principle. And it is patently clear there. So if you use only the mainland, the coastline of the mainland principle in the delineation to the exclusion of the coastlines of the islands as to the reckoning point, it will actually reduce the coverage of the municipal water. So on the on the on the left would be where you could see a significant reduction if you use the mainland principle, whereas in on the right it would show the true extent of the municipal waters using the archipelagic principle. Second, so in figure 2, um, municipal A here would lose municipal waters in blue generated by its islands upon the application of the mainland principle. So these types of municipalities, as has been shown, would be municipalities of Kaluya, in Antique, in Sitangkay, Tawi-Tawi. So according to NAMRIA, the municipal waters, when you apply the mainland principle, is only limited to the marine waters enclosed within the third line with the mainland's coastline. And thus, it will reduce the coverage of the municipal waters and creating pockets of land that are less significant than the mainland. So, you could see these pockets, the one in white, as pockets of land which would be considered as less significant than the mainland. Okay? The next figure would show when the same effect would also happen as the previous one happens in the delimitation of municipal waters in this figure. So here, municipality B loses effect of its islands in it determining equidistant line, which is in red line, and concomitantly, it loses municipal waters, that's the one in blue, if we have to apply the mainland principle. So, municipality B would be something like the municipality of Marungas in Sulu. So, they would again lose certain areas. And the meaning of this, the ones in blue would actually be the areas where commercial fishing can come in. And look how near these activities would be in these outer islands already when you apply the mainland principle. And then figure 4 is when municipality B, which owns the island, will lose its municipal waters to municipality A because of the fact of the application of the mainland principle. So municipality B is like but not limited to San Jose in Occidental Mindoro and Sapa in Tawi-Tawi. So the absurdity in using the mainland principle is clearer in this figure. Because if you look at municipality B here, it has an offshore island which is beyond its mainland's 15-kilometer range. So this is the mainland of municipality B, and this is their offshore islands. Okay, so if you compute the 15 kilometers from the mainland, so this would be now the outer limit of their municipal water. So island B, which is actually within municipality B, would somehow be, a pocket, would be generate its own protection zone as indicated earlier. And it will be beyond, the municipal waters per se of municipality B. So this one, where you can now see, aside, if there are 7 fathoms that will be provided around this area, then you would see, commercial fishing activities also happening in this blue area or blue zone. Figure 5, I think this is the last example. This is an example where municipality A would lose its municipal waters from its barangay on another island, and this which is distant and more than 15 kilometers from its mainland. So this is the situation of Bungao, Tawi-Tawi. So you have municipality A here, and this is the barangay of A, while there is another municipality in the same island as barangay A. So if you draw the mainland is from municipality A's municipal hall, so that would be, the circle would be the municipal waters of municipal A. However, its barangay A would now have um, an area outside the municipal waters of municipality A, and will just generate its own protection zone. And so you'll see something like this. So the blue zone will be the lost area for the municipality A. Okay. So in any event, we think that, the UNCLOS principles extend to our domestic law. So I already discussed this, and this following thoughts, additional thoughts na I'll just like to add na before I end, is that it is really anomalous to apply relevant principles under UNCLOS 3 in all aspects except the drawing of archipelagic baselines, because it is clearly the intent of the legislature to apply the legislative principle. So here, the relevance of UNCLOS 3 to our fisheries legislation are demonstrated in this following instances. First, the definition of Philippine waters used in determining the application of the provisions of the Fisheries Code. Second, the use of the low water mark in drawing the baseline, which is actually in line with the principle adopted in the UNCLOS, where they also use the low water mark in determining the baseline when drawing territorial waters. And lastly, the use of municipal archipelagic baseline. So you see, with these three instances, it is clear that UNCLOS 3 is actually applied and is relevant in our fisheries legislation. So finally, our conclusion is that based on our close examination and assessment of the different fisheries laws in the country, if you use the mainland principle in DA-BFAR's construction of the definition of municipal waters, it has no valid basis in law, and the use of archipelagic doctrine is actually in implementation of the spirit and intent of the 1987 Constitution, the Fisheries Code as amended, our international treaty obligations, and related laws and regulations. So that ends my presentation. Thank you so much for your kind attention. So, good afternoon, everyone. Hello? So if you have any questions, I'll be open for any questions that you would like to ask. So just let me know, and you can also ask on the chat box for those who are online. Um, and I'll now turn it over to the facilitator of this program. Thank you so much.
Okay, so before we entertain questions from the other participants, can we hear it from the leaders first? Your stand or your comments about this proposed guideline of municipal water delineation. So we start from Honorable Tukula, sir.
Ato ang ato ang mga owners sa Cebu himo sila ng association, then nagpatabang sila sini Governor Gwen sa press pa niya nga termino. So nagpatawag si Governor Gwen o meeting with the LGUs sa mga mayors o sa mga owners sa Cook to Batista 2011. Kunya ang SCCRMC doon ay position paper niya to come up daw position paper. Ngayon ang support ng himon natin with municipal water. Ang atong gusto 15 kilometers niya po ng municipal water. So ang gusto sa mga kukubunters ng inyo GIS para pisto na sila yung kapanag. Ito yun. Kunya, di una o tawag ang association mga kukubunters that is mga partners sa 35 owners, operator. Kunya, ang ilang mga lands ito nagkonto siya, nakunsipay ito. So muna nagkikuha ng kukukupo dito nga kung tagaan sila dyan mga ilang mahimo sa mga small fishermen. Tabangan nila, makuha. Then human gitawag ang LGU o kung sa'y opinion sa LGU. So why nitindog taga LGU? Ang pag-iliko ng kapitulyong sa ilang sa Fisheries Council dito sa kapitulyo ngayon na nai-submit position paper sa SCCRMC kung sa pitukahan. So ibasa na po ang mga position paper at di yun mo yun. After that, ang mga lawyers sa ubang mga towns, before na po may postpone na rin sila mo yan. So, ang isulting ng Governor Gwen, nga nakadungog na po mga operators, so karon ko iga, di mo pwede sa kay nadungog ninyo kamo yung kontrol niya. Anto na karon. No? Anto na karon. So, kinisan nilang pagbago, ibago nila nga ma-reduce mo kayo na kay Ireland sa existing karon kay 15 na. Simple ang ngayon po ito, 15 na. Hindi ka na karoon mo ka mas mag-focus kay asal ni Ireland sa kita. So, mo request yun. Ang ilang municipal water. Sabi niya. Karoon kay Dickman. So, mamino sa municipal water o mga kailan. Anong sabi lang? So, mukha na siya, murog na siya. Sa kalong, sa isipin ko. Pero kung na siya, pwede ka rin ismo ang lang. No? Ako anong doon na siya. Kaya ang nila na may consider. Nila na i-consider. Municipal pa. So, mauna, in principle, sa ambutan ko sa mga panahon sa uban ng mga years, pero ito, as among i-upos niya ito, ang naandang niya po na ito nga archipelagic na Aquatic. 15 kilometers. So, pamunta sa ubang mga viewers.
May hapon na tanan. Kami sa Lungsod Salkay naman among Vice Mayor ko Gilera ko. Bisan tinuod ang Lungsod Salkay wala man kay island, wala may island. Pero mo-support lang po sa itong kalungsod na ang uslog ko na siguro na island, mo-support lang po 15 kilometers niya po para tagaan ko kayo. Tapos sa hatag sa atong local fishermen.
May hapon na itong talan kasi sa among group discussion. nakita nato na kung archipelagic delineation ang gamito, favorable to kayo to all municipalities because including the far-flung mga islands na covered by moving the line towards municipal coastal area from which we will gauge our protected area which is 15 kilometers beyond. Pasig na yung mga isla na hindi na ma-cover. So, mahimo na yan na where commercial fishing can be done. And dire sa pagtuka sa south, nakita kung sa Argao may basihan, kurang di kaya may mga problema kay ang Argao, ang Bohol is just mga 28 or 24 nautical miles or kilometers pa. So basically, nag-overlap tas Bohol. So nag-overlap tas Bohol, so wala yung commercial fishing within that area. And kung measure may of 15, measure sa ng Bohol ng 15, including the laki, di, mag-ilang pa sa ito, medyo safe, yeah. But sa umang igsuko na po, there is a second district municipalities. Yeah, I think it is support me sa Stanley, Mayor Tumolak, and the rest of the other mayors na ayaw na kung ang consideration would be archipelagic and other places for sa delineation. Kaya with the other amendments karon na nakita nato, which tagaan pag yun o kagayunan na ang municipality together with the FRC to promoting regulations that the minimum sustainable yield will be the basis for giving permits and allowing fishing activities within the municipality. Mayo kayo. So, base sa among discussion, mora to yung mga discussion na tulo na rin. Kaya salamat doon may hapon na doon sa
Kaya po sa tanan, premiers, report. Kalau sa number, okay lang may access sa phone. Kami gana di sa 15 kilometers. Kaniba ang mga tugkog, ano ginapit na sa Lidlong, yan mo nga. Sabi ko din pa, kaya natin kaya ang mga batay dagat. Ako lang concern, ayan ako, ikalik pa yan din yung modak or inside mga tubad na ilan mo. Regarding ba sa municipal boundaries sa Thunder Road, ayun di ba? Naman din ang light shipping, ganunggo. Ang light shipping, ang pandalan is under sa uslog. Pero, nagdunggo sa barko, tas lagi mo, mamurag anak sila mo, water naman na sa Santander. So, asa na guna, diba? Naman sila maglugat ninyo, tax. O, yan. Pantalan kayo nyo. Pantalan din ba ito? Nanaan sila, diba? So, murag na sila. Bayan, tingnan na sa Santander. Pantalan, bilang pantalan sa mainit. Pero ang bar, ay nagdag sa barko, Santander na. Nana na ng barko, hindi mo man dati yung mula. Kaya kung pumuntahan na, i-cross na sa pantalan sa Santander. So, dapat pa, duwa ilang panana, kaya lang, tingnan sa
tunga lang ninyo, tunga.
wala sila, kaya tayo mo yun.
Gusto ka ano yun?
Mag-gusto ko lang ang pwede. Wala na akong Santander. Wala na kaya, at tingnan namin, nabuto na niya.
Nagtunga din yato, nagtunga. Tunga, katunga ng amuha.
Mayor, mag-meeting man na kasi sa SCCRMC after this. So kasi mag-table sa agenda.
Pagmuha na
Kung wag magina sa SCCRMC. Or kasi ka lang gusto.
Ang ako lang, kinsa man yung agency ang kalisay na pwede sila mulukat sa tender, pwede po sa uslog. Pero kung may ganit. Oh.
Usually, you're planning to have na into one dispute sa on the way. So, kami sa access, pagkaro, okay na, hindi man lang, may mahatag sila. Okay lang yung ngayon. Ang problema lang, o ang yung namin ito, makapot mo respect ang kuwan, kaya kailang minsan.
Okay, so ang kung ano ba na model sa delegate no? For the municipal waters, meron naman kami at mga isang panglaw. Bilaran sa delegate na muna kilometers from the coastal line. Pero actually, naku ang problema sa ulit na siguro sa lungsod sa delegate kay kanay isda sir, kasang mahala. Litong di unsahol ng pambarato niya. Yung silang nahidag sa mga bayaw dito. Ano na yung taktak ng kuko? Ang mga nagtagok ng buhol. Kunya, ang isda na makuha sa bayaw sa dalagit. Nadalo dito sa buhol. Wala ka problema kayo sa ulo. Sa kanila niya. Hitalan naman sila mga fishermen. Pero kung busy, kinsa may atong mataktak ko ng mga payo doon. So muna nagplano ni si Bus Alan na kami sa Atapos ang accredited lake usang ka pupo o duhaba kung taktak ang payaw. Para niya, ang requirement na once na payaw sa delegate o mga mataktakan ang isda, ano yung clear yung delegate? Kamong tagaan ko, mga ayaw mo, naku-naku na persona. Kagalagan mo ko, ano yung ikuan? So muna yung tanong isda lang kay, isang pagkulpresan, mukayo ng mga tao, mga palintina, mga kagati, mga stisita na tingnan niya, kung kukusin yung lungsod, dagat, bukit. Tingnan niya, parang ito kasi yung isda din hinokay, palman, ka na yung dagat ng dagat. Sus, mas mahal mo man sa sigat gani na ito isda dito. So, wala yung sa mga kwan without noon, ako sa Atapos. So, similar rin. May hapon, nalang ko i-share ka ng base sa cooperation ba. Sa Argao, nagtaktak ng mga kapayaw, more or less, we have around 30 kapayaw. Ang namong mountain barangay zone, they are enjoying isda, may baligya na mo. 30 minutes, catch from the sea. 30 minutos, tuan na sa pinakabukirang barangay sa lungsod sa Argao. Presyo, 130 matag kilo. Kini, wa na ko ni mahimo, huwag tabang ihatag si Mayor Jeffrey ako. Ang among gihimo ni Mayor Jeffrey, marang isda ni Paglayas, among ipagkuha voters ID sa Argao sa Alagit. Ang among gihimo, nagtaktak kong bayaw. Pag human akong taktak kong bayaw, kung manitay kugkog na manaktak sa lungsod sa Argao, ibisita ko ni Mayor Jeffrey, ingon si Mayor Jeffrey, na ay taga-dalagin dili na tag-iyang kugkog na gamay, less than 3 tons sa tupa, dili ma-consider commercial fishing. Ang gihatag na solusyon ni Mayor Jeffrey nako nakatabang yun. Kay primero tak-tak na mo, nakakuha manday mi. Ikaduha, nakakuha sa dili kay nagko, nakakuha mi sa 100 kilos, 150. Pero ang 100 kilos, mapadagan ni mo sa kabukilan, malipay ng mga tao, but the most important part of that is the ripple effect paghatag sa presyo. Ang merkado sa unang presyo pa sila 280, 260. Karon basta naa mi taktak kay bawa man sila ang among presyo 130. Maglinya mga tao sa baybayon. Ang merkado napugos o drop sa presyo na 160, 180. So by creating such fear sa mga negosyante, they are forced to bring down the price. So nga po kastorya, not necessarily we will be able to supply the needs of the entire Argawanon, but only a fraction of that. But that fraction na ito would create an idea, would create a momentum by which these fish vendors na namaligyan mahal, mapukos yung followers ng presyo, yung timing niya na publikuha, di mahal nila ng presyo. So such act provide check and balance in the prices of our fish in the municipality. Karon, we enjoy tingali kada semana magkahatag ni tulo ka barangay at 130 matag kilo. So, mga kung na with the cooperation along ni Jeffrey, kung resulta. Ito nga, ang suggestion ni Mayor Jeffrey, I hope that we will get the nakasabot naman midiri, ang pag-utang o usakap fishing boat that would cater the need ikan sa Argao ngadto sa Sambuan would greatly help us. Inani, if you allow me, inani na mo pagpagi. Ang kuha, isabot na mga mananagat, basta mayroong klases isda, 80 pesos ang among palit ikan sa nanakta, tagias fishing boat. Everything ipalit sa lusod sa Argao. So pagpalit, namin sharing po sa tagias sakyanan. Ang tagias sakyanan will get around, tagias barko will get around murag 60% pa na iha. 40% mo ato sa municipality. Municipality na nag-ias payaw. Pero 40%, 60% of the 40% goes to the fishermen na nagbantay sa payaw. 60% mo ato nila of the 40%. But ang lungsod gets to buy everything. Money sharing na sa barko. Nakay 80 pesos matag kilo baliton sa Fishermen's Association sa lungsod sa Argao. Ang Fishermen's Association mubaligya nato sa among Women's Association sa 45 barangays, sila mo distribute mo baligya sa isda. So ang among kapulungan sa mananagan doon ay 20 pesos sa kita. Ang kapulungan sa kababayan sa 45 kabarangay sa lungsod sa Argao will share another 30 pesos. So along the way, certain sectors gets to enjoy a profit gikan na. But most of all, the most important part is happy is the abot sa bukid at 130, which created the situation that other fish vendor drops the price by 160. So this addresses the problem sa mahal na isda. Pero we don't intend to supply the entire demand because ato man sang gusto ang nakaligyan isda sa malabasira magpadayon ilang negosyo. Dili lang taas tayo. So, daghang salamat o may hapon na po tanan.
Daghang salamat, Mayor Saldo, the Mayor of Municipality of Argao. So, yes, Mayor Leaman, can we hear a message?
Bakit ito, usap niya tayo ito yung isda na nabuha.
Okay, sige.
Sino mo dito malaman
Kay si Atty. Lisa, medyo out na siya. After ilang minutes siguro, so let's hear from Mayor Leaman.
May hapon tayo. Kami nagpasalamat niya sa aming boss na sa CCEF na si Bilton Pumula na sa nakilala po kay Philippine Abot Dulay kung wala na yung bitara. Kung kalamig at ko mag-meeting sa Tanawan, at sunod po si John lang bitay kayo, malitas nyo. Inaay, ang posisyon mo yung mga dito siya. Ito no, bisag kung sa kabisi na mo, naan yung may udom kamayo, no? Kaya masayang mag-good kung lusot-lusot ang kung para ninyo, ilagyan kayo pagayo ko yung mga requirements, usap mo dito. Kami, ipagit sa idol ba yun? Makasunod yun, may. Diba? Ano na ba? Unang salamat din tayo sa snack na lamig kayo. Kaya ako, umusunod ko sa ilang isunod. Ay ka namin. Dahil hindi ako ang isunod. Ako rin pasalamat sa ibigap sa mga kayo. Kung siya rin ang nagagawa, parihan ang gapon niya ang tuwan eh. Pero kaya bitaw ka, nakatan ang kinagin mong out, ang present, isigyan sila, pasipay sila o, di ang gumikanan para lang yung pagkumanog man, naminaw ni Atty. Rose-Liza Eisma Osorio, no? Nang salamat kayo nakaalig yung midrigod. Nalipay kayo ko, no? Bisa dito nibiya, bisa mo ang lungsod sa iyong limatag. Kaya sa iyo po mo, ano din kayo, ano masabi? Kaya ito kung may itaroon mo sa karkan, wala man. Kami din naman ito sa karkan. Ang inagagaon mo sa pista, humutong din kayo. Kaya traffic kayo. Unang traffic pa saan kayo? Sus, pitik pa ilang. Unang balang uli ang iklo dito, balik mag-traffic, kaya gabihin naman. Pusok na sa unang bitaw kami sa Buloon, support din na itong ninyo na 15 kay naghalag dito sa amuha po nga nasa bidang payaw sa amuha. Ang problema ito sa amuha sa Buloon, kaya ng payaw, usahay o bagi ng barko sa Alcoy, magputol din ang barko na kapila ng payaw. Kaya sa 15 kapila sa po, payaw na putol. Kunya, kaya kung maglunay sa ulan sa Alcoy, makatas-atas na yun na. Hindi mo magkabantay ng mayo. Kung sawa mo na muna ang karoon, hindi ka pagkon. Huwag may himo yun. Unang sabi ito barko, nalipay po kayo po na makatak-tak yun ang mga payaw. Kaya mga kwartabiya mga payaw po, ang problema na yun, kay dili taga-amuha. Mas problema ko ang siyempre kang alam nga, magkuha na katukan din ng usa, kay Buspano sa Mataglungsod, karusura, kabilipiran, kaya pwede mahalas sa isda gitinood. Kung tulingan lang mo kamarong, ay na kayo para sa bukit dito ang isda ng mabok. Kaya pwede mahalas sa isda lamisa yun. Pwede lang pala yun. Unang, kasulti ko, wala ko kayo, may kinagawa mo ka. Salamat kayo, boss, o mayong hapon. May nakapita na ito po si Dion, buhon.
Salamat here, salamat buwan. So, what the OKF ka na ngayon din yung resolution from SCCRMC supporting the archipelagic principle. Okay, so the bottom line is your pro-archipelagic principles. Okay, so before Lisa, Atty. Lisa will log out, do we have any questions from the MAU, the MENRO, or from the agriculture officer or technician from the San municipalities? Okay, so Lisa is no longer here via Zoom. So, na kasi yung Lisa strictly in terms of attendance. Okay, so any comments from our participants or the mayor or the vice mayors? None? Same like the city. So let's hear a message from one of our major sponsors for today's event, from the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines. Pardon us, our PUC, Sir Art Barrett, for his message sa mga video karuhang muna. Sige, sir.
Salamat po, mga kalahurong mayor sa kabagatang bahin sa tuang probinsya. Pagdawat na mo sa request ni Boss Ricky, nga ari diri i-held, kami may host. At kung ihatag ito sa Manila, so automatically i-aprobahan because problems on IUU, legal and reported and unregulated fishing, is a worldwide issue. In fact, 2 years ago, we conducted a program similar to this in one of the coastal cities in Indonesia, in Makassar. So I presented the problem of IUU, and we found out fisher folks coming from landlocked countries. You have the little kingdom of Bhutan, na himong mananagat, no? Flying in a Thai fishing boat, na some in Vietnamese boat, nga huwag yun na sila nakakita ng dagat since sa ilang pagkatao because they are living in a landlocked country. Huwag may dagat. Puro sa bukid ng Bhutan. So, mga mag-isang definition of municipal waters, the commercial fishers, but more of the problems of the occupational safety and health of the fisher folks. So we have naamami dire na ang kabilangan kahigtan sa mga mangingisda, including sa ato ang mga isdaay na naasa ato ang mga kining kupkup. So we monitor na with the Department of Labor and Employment, Special Department of Bureau of Working Conditions. So we participated in a lot of programs related to ang programa sa mga mangingisda. Kunya nalipay lang. We are not only signatories of a lot of UN conventions, we are also, we have ratified a lot of the UN conventions and international agreements and initiatives. O saan niya na ito ang UNCLOS. So in 1994, kini ito ang gihimo karon, no? Alang malis kabulahanan sa mga mulupyo sa mga kalungsuran. So salamat din sa inyo sa pagtambo o niya anytime no ug ay programa nga susama niini ang CCEF, the Coastal Conservation Education Foundation, ang dami kanunay sa pagdawat tungkol sa inyo ang mga programa himuon na susama ni Corpoy. Thank you. Thank you.
Daghang salamat, Sir Art. Daghang salamat yun. Grabe ang support ni Sir Art sa CCEF. Likewise, sa CCEF from Sir Art sa iyang advocacy. Well, in fact, Sir, doon dahil tayo sa radio programa ni Sir Art. So, kasi dami ganang mga concerns tayo sa karagatan sa advocacy and always lobby na on your behalf during this last CCEF sa telegrama ni sa radyo ni Sir Art. Thank you. Daghang salamat kay Sir Art for that. So, ako ihatag ang microphone sa ating Executive Director to recap and at the same time do the closing remarks before we proceed sa atong final pictorial karong hapunan. So, Ricky?
Okay, to recap, the discussion is basically around the proposed revised definition sa BFAR sa municipal waters. Instead of so the directly affected municipalities will be those having highlands. No? Kaya sa ito lang ginayon, example sa Oslo, imbis magsubo ng 15 kilometers sa Sumilon, karon subo naman dirigit sa mainland. Atras yun. So with that, based on mga reactions, it seems that it is the unanimous understanding, agreement that at least SCCRMC will support archipelagic principle as basis for delineation of this water. So hopefully a resolution or a letter that will come out. Now second, yes, Mayor, actually na plano na punta to because we want secure provincial coastal resource management council. Kung kamo, ang lima ka mayor dito sa secure, kamo dito, maglingkod, magstorya, sila po, mga bawo po sila dito, para mag-exchange of ideas. Kaya doon na sila bawo kung hihimo dito, in terms of coastal enforcement, natin po hihimo nga mayo. So, mas mayo lang magka-exchange of information, mga best practices. Natubig ng tao. Supposedly, duha ka set, una, kamoy mo host, sila mali, yung ikaduha, sila na po mo host, kamoy mo iba to. In fact, nahina na ito si Mayor at kumulasyon na kung okay ba mo, na mo ang itong si Mayor. But for now, 14 days mo, i-quarantine dito, no exception. So maybe next year, we would like to see if we can do that, no? So, kami naman, so, but kung i-allow na next year, we will do that, no? Kung i-allow na next year. And then maybe, as part of our project sa Adobos, maybe we can still assist SCCRMC sa further discussion sa kantong planong mag-coordinate ang mga munisipyo sa isla to counter the unregulated pricing. Kaya kung siya ma-appeal ko namin ko, presyo sa DTI, no? Sa isla. Wala ko siya ma-appeal sa monitor. Price monitoring? O, loob supply. Kuha ng loob supply ng demand. I-amin, no? Wow, ng loob. Wala kong mula na yun. So, tingali, we will again help you, SCCRMC, na mag-sipkan kami to discuss further kung saan ito mag-materialize ang coordination between municipalities in terms of credit ba, ang bayaw, ang taktak sa bayaw, or maybe na-avoid coordination in terms of price monitoring or price standardization, sabat, whatever it is. So maybe we should sit down again to have that very specific agenda. And yes, again, thank you, Halo PUCP. The offer ni Art, ang i-average program every Wednesday, 6:30 to 7, sa DYLA for CCEF concern. Usa sa concern niya sa SCCRMC. So I don't know if maybe one of these days, kasi usa ninyo ako
review sa
usa na sa tao nanonood mo. Okay, maybe one of the programs on the are kasi one or two of you can guest sa radio program and also stream live sa Facebook. So that's every Wednesday, 6:30 to 7. So with that, daghang kayong salamat mga mayor sa inyong paghatag ng panahon kung magdala sa ating mga 1,000. Thank you.
So thank you so much for making us. So dapat tayo mga look forward na may be under project secured. One is the MOA signing soon, and kapag ginawag na intercollab na meeting sa SCCRMC or SCCRMC hopefully sa City Work Province. So daghang salamat. So before we end this afternoon symposium, okay ba Victoria said that? And we also had visitors from GMC, from Old Global Corporate, our reliable business partner. Daghang salamat sa pagtungha. Yes. So shall we request the rest of the delegates to please come over for our pictorial. Mayors will remain seated.